Hello and welcome to another one of my videos where I'm exploring Bing Chat on various levels. So you'll notice on the thumbnail I've gone over to calling these sort of videos Bing Chat before bedtime, and I'll do that where they fall into that category. So let me just explain the title. What I'm discovering is that I'm starting to use Bing Chat and also the discovery feature in Edge a lot as a sort of wind down period before I go to bed. And so what I thought it would be interesting to do in videos is represent the sort of experiments I've been trying out with the benefit of a next day reflection, I suppose, to some degree. I'm not going to dig through this too much before I do the videos, because in some ways that spoils the unpredictability to some degree. But I just thought I'd mention how these are coming about. Now, for this particular example, this was a good situation where I had a bit of a causal crossroads going on. So let me just explain with this particular thing. I'm going to illustrate how it came about. So I think about 2 weeks ago, I finally got round to pulling the trigger on a Humble Bundle package. I'll include a link to this website if it's something you're not aware of. I'm not sponsored by them anyway. I'm not, receiving money for promoting this. I just think it's a really cool idea and I should have looked into it earlier. And the bundle that I purchased, it was just coming to the end of its availability. I'm sure they'll re-offer it. It was under the books bundle and it was a large set, I think about 20 or so of the O'Reilly Cookbooks. And I just love those O'Reilly Cookbooks. So I purchased it. I now have them. They're all DRM free, which is great. And so that was one thing. So I already had those kicking around. I think it was last week I did a video where I was showing people how using the sidebar in Edge you can interact with websites you're on, and the example I used was actually where I brought up a paper, a PDF from I think it was a Cornell website, and I was just pointing out how that the fact that not only could you do it on regular web pages or some web pages, because sometimes it's a bit hit and miss depending on how the web page is rendered, what technology is going on in the background, and also that extended to any PDFs. And then of course it dawned on me a couple of days later that Edge can just open local PDFs. So I could take those PDFs of the O'Reilly books and interact with them in a sort of Copilot learning manner like I did with the papers, and use them to enhance my learning experience. And that's what we're going to try out in a moment. So it's sort of come together as a lot of interesting things do. One thing I did want to mention before I dive in, and it's just related to Bing Chat generally, is I did track down a couple of papers from February which look a bit under the bonnet of the whole Bing and Edge, Copilot for the web thing. So I'll include links to those because I'm getting really interested, particularly in this, whatever you call it, however you want to think of it, this ecosystem, this Prometheus ecosystem that this is happening in. So this sort of Bing orchestrator, Bing index ranking and answers, and the GPT, how they all work together to get what you get when you use Bing Chat or the features that are in Edge. So I'll include links to that as well. So anyway, back to the task in hand. On my desktop here, I have a PDF, the machine learning PDF of the particular cookbook. So I'm going to open this with Microsoft Edge, and there we have it, local copy. So if you've not seen an O'Reilly cookbook before, they are probably one of my favourite things that O'Reilly produces. The downside with them is, and as they say in the preamble, it's not a great way of learning, say a language, or they might be covering a service, like there's ones in the bundle on Amazon Web Services or cloud services or whatever. And they normally recommend you read an introductory book if you're not familiar with the language or the technology before. But once you've done that, I find these are great learning tools, because they sort of teach you some core things that come up when you use languages in certain ways. In this case, this is specifically machine learning, and it's using Python. So let me give you an example here of what to expect if you've not seen these before. So you've got multiple chapters on different things. In each chapter there'll be multiple subsections. So supposing you want to know how to create a vector using Python, and here you can see we're using NumPy. There we have a piece of code which you can obviously type in. Now, you can probably guess where I'm going with this. As I started to fiddle around with this, I realised that you can obviously do this. So I can send this, and I'm in balance mode at the moment, and I can get the discover feature in Edge, whatever you want to call this, to give its own description of exactly what's going on. So if I find that the discussion here isn't sufficient for me to understand what's going on, and maybe I've dived straight in with the cookbook, maybe I've just decided I just want to roll my sleeves up and start playing around, and I don't want to spend some extra time going through like an introductory guide, which is what I would normally do. If I was completely unfamiliar with Python, then I'd read some sort of introductory guide. So this is the first thing, and I was doing this quite a bit already, as you saw with papers. So we get a description here. It's interesting. I've even got the reference here as well. So it must be referencing. Maybe it's referencing Stack Overflow there, and in Stack Overflow they've got a reference to the cookbook. If this is indeed, yeah, it is the same. This might be, I don't know if this is a newer edition. Let me just check. It's a 2018 one. Some of these, oh, there we go. 2020, second release. So it is a second release. Now, initially when I was looking at the Humble Bundle, I thought maybe it might just do older books, but I was quite surprised. Like, I think at least one of the books, and is 2022. So it's not as if it's necessarily old stock as well, if you can indeed call ebooks old stock. But where it was getting interesting is as I was getting further down this list, and it was more getting into the weeds of vectors, matrices and arrays, I was finding I didn't understand some of the terminology as applied to matrices and vectors. Possibly I'd never come across it, quite possibly, which is more likely, I'd just forgotten it, because once you learn matrices, you tend not to think about it so much. And although I've used matrices throughout my career in different guises, probably things like matrix multiplication and other transformations on matrices, I haven't probably been doing so much. So it was interesting as I got down. Sometimes I found that maybe the discussion didn't quite go into as great detail as I wanted it to. I know what's really cool in here, obviously with the PDFs, which is nice. You can see I can click on here and it can take me out to the web, so I would be able to get that initial or that additional description if I wanted to. But I thought it was pretty neat that using this sidebar feature on a local PDF, I could do this. Now I'm going to try something. Instead of saying explain, let's try, and this worked when I did it the other night. Can you run the above code? Now I may have to reword this. Sometimes it will just say this is how you run it, and other times it will actually run it and give you a result. Okay, so it's not doing that this time. That's interesting, but it is just representing it there. Just run the above code. See. Oh. What about what would the output be for the above code? Or should I say previous code? Because yeah, so let's just try and see. It's already, let me just represent this. So this is something I noticed when I was playing around with it. And I've got to perfect this technique, and this is part of what this video is illustrating. So let's do this. What would the output be? For the code. I really need to work on my prompt engineering, I know. Let's try something else. Just see if I can get it to do this. Oh, my mistake. I do need that. Try that again. The other thing you'll notice is with this, yeah, if it's already sort of waiting here to do something, let me just run explain on it rather than refresh here. I do find it is quite tricky sometimes to highlight these. You want to do with the text. Maybe I need to put the result B. Oh God. I probably need to better document. Okay. Yeah, that's good. So that did work. So yeah, so you got to be careful. Sometimes saying, "Can you run the code?" doesn't cut it. You might be better off asking it things like, what's the result of the code? I'd be careful of words like product, because that has certain mathematical meanings. And again, this is why understanding contextually what are the best terms to use when prompting Bing Chat for answers. Yeah, that's super important. So I suppose just to summarize here, in case you've lost where I've been going with this, is the two things I find most useful with this ability to actually get Discover to work with a local PDF by just opening it into Edge, is that one, you can obviously get it to explain code snippets. So you can highlight this. If maybe you're finding in this particular example with this book that the discussion isn't deep enough, or you just don't understand the rudiments enough to actually know what the discussion represents, or understand the explanation, you can further get it to explain here. But also with the correct request, you can, with certain ones, get it to display the result. And now, admittedly, as part of the thing here, it does also display the result anyway, but I thought it was pretty neat that you can also get that to some degree within here. Now you can see if I had chosen to explain it anyway, as part of the explanation, it's also giving me the return as well. And what I did here is, as I was getting down here, like for instance the term trace, it wasn't one that I was super familiar with within the context of a matrix. So the tracing matrix is the sum of the diagonal elements and is often used under the hood in machine learning methods. Given a NumPy multi-dimensional array, we can calculate the trace using trace. We can also return the diagonal of a matrix and calculate the sum. So again, I could do this. Let's see whether we have any success again with it getting to actually display the result itself by just explaining it. So and of course I'm including the comments as well. So there we go. Oh, that's quite, it gave it a breakdown there. I found it's quite difficult once you copies it in here to actually modify it. So that's one thing that could be a bit of a problem. Now, let's see what happens if I include everything, because I'm sure people are curious about that. So here I've got, just within it, I've got the answers already there. You can see here, as I said, let me just see if, did that pull everything across? Yeah, it did. So let me just see if I can delete out that. Yeah, you see, I can't do that. And I don't think you can even do it before you press the send as well. I did try that the other day, but that may change. So if I do explain again, now this time round I've actually got the outputs in there. They're already in there. Okay, so you can see it's pulled out here the results from there. And again, what I could do is an eigenvalue. So here we go, we get a bit more of an explanation. And of course, as I pointed out before, you can copy this to, your favourite document creation program, your Word, or even just Notepad, so you can actually see properly the references in there as well. So I'm sure when I'm going through this, because I'm making a point every day of reviewing my humble bundle purchases to make sure I get value for money out of it. Now, in addition to me being able to work my way through, possibly copy these into a Notepad or into Spider, or something within Anaconda, which is what I tend to use for playing around with Python. There's a really cool environment for doing that. Or I can read up these. I've got this additional thing now of being able to pull stuff across in here and again act as my learning Copilot. So I thought you'd find that interesting. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next video.